welcome to another episode of the Sofer.AI Chatter podcast. I'm Nachi Weinstein. A few programming notes. There are two Purim-related episodes coming up. One is a bio of Haman, and another is about Esther in the age of Rembrandt. There will also be two Purim small talks by Tzvi Hirsch-Ferber on Esther and new Sofer Shvil on Tzvi, and also Ibn Kaspi's commentary on Esther. Pesach, right now, there'll be a episode with Professor Joshua Berman and his new Tanakh of the Land of Israel, Haggadah, through Koren Publishers. If anyone has any other Pesach-related topics and or guest suggestions, please message me, email me, sfarmchatter@gmail.com. Also, there's a few other new episodes to mention that are upcoming. An episode on the Bear, an episode on a Norman convert to Judaism during the Crusades, an episode on the Smak, another episode with Professor Glinert on Hebrew, and many more. So if anyone's interested in sponsoring any of those episodes, please email me, sfarmchatter@gmail.com, or check out the link and information in the show notes. And you can also WhatsApp me if you're on the WhatsApp chat. Also, to sponsor any episode in general or to support the podcast in any way, find the link in the show notes, or email me, sfarmchatter@gmail.com, or WhatsApp me. You can also find a link in the show notes to subscribe to the Sfarm Chatter WhatsApp community, or WhatsApp status, where I post new books, new Sfarim, book deals, and so on. And finally, if you can please subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen and rate and review the podcast. And with that, enjoy this episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Sfarim Chatter podcast. On this episode of the podcast, I'm going to be joined by Zach Fish, who is the co-founder and CEO of Sofer.AI, or Sofer.AI, or just Sofer. And we'll be discussing Sofer.AI and their revolutionary technologies and different things that they're doing and always working on. And so this will be a little bit of a different episode of Sfarim Chatter, not a historical topic. It's not focused on a Sefer, but it's focused on AI and Torah and how it's the different areas and what it's been doing, what it's doing, what it will be doing, lots of different areas to explore. So thank you, Zach, for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be on the podcast. I'm super excited to talk about this with you.
Let's start off. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be on this podcast and to be able to talk about this with you. As you mentioned, I've had the major zchus of the last year and a half be able to work on Sofer.AI, which is a company with the mission of making Torah more accessible. And really, before this, my story before this really relates to the genesis of Sofer.AI. I was at Yeshiva University, YU, both studying computer science there and learning. I was in Rav Herschel Schachter's year. And while I was there, I realized, every day he's giving an hour, 45-minute shiur. It's posted, the audio is posted. And I wanted to do Chazar, and I wanted to find these ideas. And as I'm learning about AI and tech and all the amazing things software could do, I was frustrated that I couldn't access these ideas in their audio form. It was really hard to find ideas to remember. They're just, if you have thousands of audios, how do you find an idea? So that's really the story that led to Sofer.AI, the learning at the same time as working at software. So I was finishing undergrad at YU. I knew I wanted to stay there another year and learn. So Baruch Hashem, I had the opportunity to do that. But the end of that year, unfortunately, at the time, I felt like it was unfortunate. I didn't have a job offer that I wanted. And it was it was really hard. It's hard to not have a job offer. And I was going in the summer. I didn't have anything. I didn't know what I was going to do. But that's when I was like, I'm going to work on this idea to make these audio recordings more accessible. And I realized that if you could turn these audios into text, then what you could do is you could search them and find any idea you want, right? You could search for any time a word was mentioned and all that. So I spent the summer working on this, really just as a project to keep myself busy, something I could put on my resume, maybe post online. And I was working on this, no expectation of it going anywhere, no expectation of it turning into the company that it is today. But when I eventually figured out how to turn audio into text and I posted about it online, it blew up. The community just loved it. And I realized I wasn't the only one that wanted to have this ability. And I realized it could really be a real true service of the community to focus on these problems, to make this Torah that's in audio format more accessible to other tools and to searching and to all the wonderful things that happen once it's text. So I made the decision then to really take it seriously. And, it's a year and a half later now, and that's what I've been having this chus to be working on.
Yeah, so it's still pretty new, and many listeners, I'm sure, are familiar with it, and some aren't. And we're going to discuss the different features and different things it does and doesn't, and what it's doing, and how it compares to other AI. So a lot to unpack. Let's just start off something else about you. Is that were you always a techie? Were you always interested in tech and AI?
No, not really. I didn't really even know much about the field before I started, studying it in college. I think when I first went to my first computer science class, I thought it was like actually physically working on computers, like the actual hardware, and I didn't understand this concept of software. And what I really liked about it, I fell in love with like the solving of problems. It's like very much, it's almost like learning, a tough sugya or doing like a puzzle where you really have to think about how you're going to solve it, and you work through it and you try different approaches. And once you solve it, there's no better geschmack than that. So that's when I fell in love with like this industry, and I just happened to line up that that this industry has been taking off and it's been fantastic and just been booming. So a lot of siyata d'shmaya there. But
And as it pertains to AI and the booming field of AI, especially the past couple of years, also not long, were you interested in that, or also not until just you saw it?
yeah, so the way it worked in YU is that you could choose two tracks for what you want to specialize in when studying there. And the track I chose eventually got at the time it was called data science, but then was renamed to AI to meet the what's in style. But I really was drawn to like specifically the AI track because I really liked working with real world problems. I think that always fascinated me, to like real world data and being able to solve problems and analyze things that are like pertain to reality and that could solve problems. I never thought at the time that I'd be able to work on Torah specifically, but that always just solving problems, I think, is something that I've been very motivated and excited to do.
Let's talk a little bit about the use of AI generally, the rise of ChatGPT and Google's AI and Grok and Claude and all the different AIs that people use, and each one is different. And just the general use, I remember, when was it? Was it a year ago now or a year and a half ago, and they put out the whole chayrim, a whole ban on AI, and everyone's hacking about AI. Yeah, AI, no AI. And it's a continuous conversation, and AI has obviously pros and minuses, and we're not going to sit here and just discuss all the pros and cons of AI, but just in general, what do you have to say on the use of AI generally before we get to the use of AI, or just AI in general?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand, AI's existed before ChatGPT, and no one was putting, a cherem on it because it wasn't even in the, zeitgeist. Like no one really knew about it. And now after ChatGPT became trendy, now everything's AI. Everything that before you wouldn't even know is AI, is now being labeled as AI. So it's not a catch-all. I think they're definitely, just from addressing the religious perspective, there's probably certain tools and products that, should be carefully monitored and maybe not used. And there's things that are labeled as AI that, don't have the same dangers. And just because some company, I'm not even referring to Sofer.AI, I'm saying even non-Jewish companies, if you brand it as AI, doesn't mean it's necessarily going to have the same danger across all products. Yeah, I think that's first. And second, I think it is legitimate. I think the main issue that I see with LLMs which are like these chatbots, like the ChatGPT, Gemini, Anthropic's Claude, is that people are going to them as a source of authority and are trusting them, putting so much trust into them. And they're really fantastic tools if you realize they're just doing math, basically, essentially behind the scenes to give you the best sequence of words in a row that are the most probabilistic, and they aren't thinking, and they're not a super genius, and they can't replace your rabbi, and they can't replace your doctor, and they can't replace this. They could give you really good information if used properly, and they could be leveraged to be used really properly. But I think an issue is that people are not going to them as tools; they're going to them as a source of authority, and what that means is you're just going to trust whatever it is. You're going to stop thinking for yourself. You're not going to feel the need to think independently. And that, nothing I said right there is specific to, the Jewish world. But it obviously is also an issue if a young boy is, asking machshava questions and religious questions and questions of faith and halacha questions and all these types of things, I think, could pose religious problematic issues. I could see why communities would want to not encourage that or not allow that, to give access to this device that seems so eloquent and so convincing and always seems correct and just seems so smart to just give this out to everyone in everyone's pocket. There probably are issues and things that have to be figured out, how to implement the strategy to keep it safe and all that. I'm glad I don't have to make these decisions for the community, but I understand where people are concerned.
Yeah, and far be it from me. I'm not any authority, and I'm really a nobody when it comes to this field. But my personal feeling is what you were saying, is that AI is an excellent tool, but that's what it should be used as. And we look at art and music and AI writing. It's not a critical writer. It's not. It does a lot of these things. Its art isn't good. Its music is good. Again, these things will improve as AI improves, but this stuff is just not. It doesn't replace humans in that sense, and we can't look at it that way. But to use it as a tool, as Sofer.AI does, and this is not just talking about Sofer.AI. I mean, however you're using AI as a tool, it's extremely useful, and like any other tool throughout the centuries. When I just had this series on print, when print was created, and you think back with the telephone and I'm sure the telegraph and the telegram and the telegram and the phone and the cell phone and television and internet, all these things are always considered bad. So there's ways to use them and ways not to use them. So now let's turn to AI in Torah. When it comes to using AI in Torah, and what do we even mean by that? Like, how do we use it? I mean, there's obviously Sofer.AI, so you can talk from personal experience, but there's other programs as well. And I mean, people ask ChatGPT, Shilas, like you're saying, they literally ask it questions. And I know that Dicta has the one, Rabbi AI. I mean, there's so many, like that's a Jewish program, and there's all these different, like we can talk about that, and then we can talk about what Sofer.AI does. But what do we mean when we talk about AI in Torah, and what do you think about that?
Yeah, so the framework that I like to think about it through is in a foreword to the Utzer Meforshei Talmud. Rav Hutner, has this line, and you could say there too, it's making finding ideas easier. Maybe that's bad. Maybe Torah should just be hard. Like maybe it's hard. The melus, you have the melus, that's the mitzvah to be osek in Torah. Why make it easier, right? So he quotes from the Chazon Ish that there's a difference between chipus and yagia. And some people can confuse the two. That just searching through Sfarim all day and working to find things, that they think that's a melus b'Torah. And he says that's not true a melus b'Torah. That's just searching. It's not actually interacting with the Torah ideas. It's work, and maybe there's value in it, but it's not the same as a melus itself in Torah. And and actually using your brain to think about Torah and reflect on Torah and to learn Torah. So in Sofer.AI, I think I use that framework to build tools that help with the search. Not actually the generation of ideas, not the generation of psak, not the generation of chidushim, none of that. Really, just to make Torah more accessible, to help find ideas, to help connect, to find Mari Makomos, to help if Torah is in audio. As I said, as I referenced earlier, it's very inaccessible. You can't search it, you can't print it, you can't summarize it, you can't do anything with it. But if it's in text, now we could index it, we could create searches for it, we could categorize it, and it's much easier to find. And I think that's the distinction I like. And I think we can't give our thinking over to AI. And again, a lot of these things are not just in the realm of Torah, as you mentioned before, with tools in general. I think there's a big danger, specifically in AI, that there's a lot of technological innovation throughout history. And a lot of times when the new technology comes, you lose a skill. So, for example, people, I'm of the generation that didn't experience this, but people used to remember hundreds of phone numbers, right? And people used to be able to get to one place to another without using a GPS, right? I have none of those skills, and I don't know how to do that. I'm amazed that people that this was commonplace. I can't remember. I barely even remember 5 phone numbers, right? But I feel comfortable living my whole life not needing to remember hundreds of phone numbers. I don't think it's going to be a chisaron in my life. I don't think it's going to limit me, all that. So the technology replaces a skill, but because it replaces a skill, you don't need that skill, right? By AI, I don't think that's the case, because as I referenced before, I think the right way to maximize AI is as a tool, not as it itself is a person of authority. So to use a tool, you have to be proficient in that domain, right? To be able to direct it, to be able to call it out on its mistakes, to be able to understand what it's doing, to understand how to leverage your skills using the AI, right? So there's kind of this almost paradox where if you start using AI for your thinking, you're going to weaken your ability to think through certain issues. And that's going to weaken your ability to use the tool itself. So this is the insight that I had, that whereas by other tools, the tool could replace the skill, but that's fine because it replaces the skill. Here, the tool cannot replace the need that it fills, because it's by over relying on the tool, you're going to weaken your ability to use the tool, and you're just going to not be able to think critically. So I think as users, you have to kind of make sure that you are still working out your brain and making sure to properly be thinking and thinking critically and thinking hard, and not just using AI to think through everything. I think Torah is the most amazing way to do this. I think, our community is going to have such an advantage, just even the chavrusas, there's not really a space for AI. That you have a chavrusa, you think through it live with another person, to think critically to the ideas. I think that's going to be really important. And you could use AI to help you find things, to help you, for example, I have a chavrusa, and we had a kasha on a line of Gemara, and we couldn't find any Rishonim on the daf that asked the question. So what I did was I transcribed, 10 different shiurim on the area that I found online, and then I had bullet points. I had it transform it into bullet points of what questions were addressed in each of these shiurim, and then I found the shiur that discussed the question, and then I could listen to the shiur and then say, oh, like this. Now we got down this rabbit hole of who deals with this question, where to look, and it led us to more learning. So I think AI should take away the places in learning that are where people get stuck, and they're like stuck in the tracks, and they can't find things, and they can't advance forward, and help you actually think more yourself and to reflect more yourself.
Yeah, I think that point that you're making, that it's going to replace critical thinking, or it already is replacing critical thinking, I saw that point made elsewhere, and I think that's a very important point. It reminds me, I was reading a book recently, an excellent book, fascinating book, Index, A History of a bookish adventure from medieval manuscripts to the digital age. It's by Dennis Duncan. It's not a Jewish book, but it's about print. It's about history of the index. I know that might sound boring. It's actually a very entertaining book, and it talks about the creation of the index. And it's actually more than just it's not. I don't think there's a good comparison, just one to one with AI with tools. But I mean, the index was a creation of a tool. What you're kind of saying, it's using it to find the information rather than merely using. You're not necessarily learning the index. I mean, I guess people read dictionaries. You can read an index, but it's the same kind of thing. And where it can work and how it can work. And so what you're saying is a very important point, and that's where also Sofer.AI comes in. So I think we should talk about Sofer.AI so the listener can understand how AI can be just a tool, and it's not actually replacing your critical thinking, and you're not asking a shaila. So let's talk about Sofer.AI, what it does. I'll leave it to you to explain to the listener.
Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, the genesis of Sofer.AI really had to do with transcribing audio, and the realization that when Torah is in audio format, it's very inaccessible and it's very intangible. You can't even really interact with it. And if we could transcribe it, it opens up many possibilities. That was the first feature. And after we got the audio into text, then we were able to build off of that. We were able to edit it, we were able to print it, we were able to summarize it, use AI to help extract ideas from it. We're able to search through a whole corpus of transcriptions, and all these wonderful things. And that's really kind of was the core of Sofer.AI for a while, specifically just taking audio, turning into text, and leveraging that text to build a lot of features. And it's really was surprising to me. I didn't even realize, how many millions, and that's not an exaggeration, of hours of Torah audio there is. And it's crazy to think about, in previous generations, the Torah passed down in text, Sfarim Chatter podcast, books, text is passed down, it's tangible, you could save it, you could index it, you could find it, it's categorized. And here I realized so much of our prime Torah, because it could be put into audio and lives in an audio space, that's where it lives. But what's going to happen in the next generation? It's not going to be this tangible thing that we could do anything with. We're just going to have hard drives full of audio files. No one's going to you're going to have to listen to every single one to even know what's in it. So I even realized that this is a bigger mission than even like, any individual learning, but it's really to make the Torah accessible not just to us, but to future generations, and to save it, to save these ideas, to keep them alive. So that was the original mission with text. Then recently, and actually based off the conversations we had, we just moved into OCR, which is taking images, instead of taking audio, taking images and turning them into editable text, searchable text. So now you could upload a 900-page PDF of an old Sefer and search for any keywords in it that you're looking for. So this is just fantastic, obviously, for many use cases. But the reason I build it, and really I build my motivation, I always build these products from the perspective of how would I want to do it just for learning more. So I build it from the perspective of I want to find an idea in a Sefer, an old Sefer that's in PDF form, and I can't search the PDF. So let me be able to upload the whole PDF, and now I can find anytime this Rishon or this Sefer talks about this idea. And again, back to this idea of just making Torah accessible. It's going to make it so much easier to find these ideas. And then what we additionally, just based off this, having all this Torah in text, it also allows not just individual users to build these. I kind of think of it as like a second brain. That's kind of a very popular term in like the software space, of building a second brain, this place where you could put ideas, put documents, and to search for it. So that's for the individual users. But now it's allowing organizations and rabbis to take all of their content, all of their old Torah, all their audios from, it could be from decades, and to get it transcribed, and now to be able to search it, to be able to categorize it, to be able to print svarim from it. I have a rabbi, a shul rabbi, he's a shul rabbi for 20 years, and he has all this Torah, and he transcribed it all. And we built a search tool for him that he could search through it with AI. So he says, where did I talk about this? When did I talk about this? How did I explain this concept before? What mashal did I give for this? And he could see all the answers to these questions from his 20 years of Torah, these thousands and thousands of hours of Torah that now is accessible to be used through software.
There's so much to add. First of all, we'll leave the OCR for a few minutes. I want to get back to that. Yeah, you mentioned just like sermons there. I remember reading Mark Saperstein's book, Exile in Amsterdam, about Rabbi Shaul Levi Mortera's sermons. I think he found like in manuscript there's like 1,500. I remember exactly the number. Maybe it's 500 actually, and like it was over years, decades. And he would go back, and I don't know if remember this is Amsterdam. We're talking 17th century, and these exist in manuscript now. And so you think about like if you would have this kind of index like you're talking about, you'd be able to go and search it. But turning back to Sofer.AI more generally is what you're saying. I mean, also just think about how many Gedolim over the centuries that we have no written Torah. I mean, obviously they gave shiurim, they gave drushes, they gave speeches, and so on. And that Torah is gone. You always find when you find like shiurei Reb so and so, they found it. The Talmud wrote it down. I remember a couple of years ago, Rabbi Moshe Kravitz, the editor of the Sforno, he found the Amar Hagoyin, as he termed it, the shiurim of the Sforno on Chumash and on Tehillim. He found it written around like an old commentary of an old Ralbag, and so. Like, wow, we have this Torah of this Sforno. But I mean, imagine, it's just imagining, like this Sforno gave shiurim, and that audio was not recorded, was gone. Or you have recordings now, like how many recordings, like this podcast, what'll be in years, no one will listen to it, or whatever the case is, it's gone. So that's really where you came in to fill that void. So what was the development, just for, we discuss a lot of history on this podcast, I think it's somewhat interesting. What was the development of Sofer.AI when you started it? It wasn't that long ago, a year and a half ago, to where it is today?
I think what changed most was it turned from a tool to realizing the mission of making Torah accessible. And that it's not just about transcription, that there's many domains in which we could do this, whether that be transcription, whether that means OCR, whether that means all the partnerships we could build with institutions to connect their Torah, whether it could be being able to search classical, texts, Gemara, Chumash, Tanakh, building tools for that. There's so much that we want to do with this mission of making Torah accessible. And I think, and there's so much to do in that space. I think that's like the biggest difference of like, it's like almost like a green field of just like, there's so many ideas we have. And the history of Sofer.AI is just trying to execute iteratively on these ideas. And as people give us feedback for how they're using them, and to just really this mission of unlocking the Torah to make it more accessible. And yeah.
So I'm looking at my list of questions, and it's like, how does Sofer.AI different from competitors? Now, Apple, Spotify, and so on offer transcriptions, and a few years ago they didn't. And I'm realizing, well, we're 25 minutes into this podcast, and we didn't really discuss how does Sofer.AI stand out? And people are probably listening going, well, okay, they do transcriptions. I mean, I read the transcription of this podcast on Apple. Like, what are you saying? Well, Sofer.AI offers the transcription is English, Hebrew, Aramaic, Yiddish, Yeshivish, all that lingo mixed together, and it's multilingual. I think you should focus on that because that's something we haven't focused on, and that's what makes Sofer.AI so unique.
Yeah, no, for sure. I realized I forgot to mention that. I would also say we really build with the sensitivity for Torah. Torah needs a certain sensitivity, and everything we take it very seriously to try to limit the downsides of AI, which we referenced before. And one of the biggest downsides is that they can make mistakes, they could hallucinate, and that's baked into their architecture, how they're built. They could just, for those that don't know, hallucinate means, generate an answer or text that's just totally incorrect. And, maybe in certain domains, if something is 97% of the time correct, but 3% is just total nonsense, you could live with it. But for Torah, we don't want to have any mistakes, right? We it's the most valuable thing, and we want it to be correct. So we build with that sensitivity as well. So as you mentioned, part of that correctness is being able to handle the English, Hebrew, Aramaic, Yeshivish, Yiddish, to be able to transcribe that correctly. That was our major breakthrough. And I didn't even mention it. I take it for granted now because, that was the first solved problem. But that was the breakthrough that really, got us on the map, is that we were able to take a shear and to be able to properly get this mixture of languages. But everything else after that is also built towards the sensitivity. So one of the core things that we build with is everything has to be verifiable. So with our transcripts, every word you could click on and hear the word. We have timestamps for every single word. You could listen to it and say what was actually said at that word. In our search, so we have a search that's meant to search you could search all your documents that you transcribe and all of the documents that you upload. So when you search for it, you could build an AI tool that gives you a really nice answer that's really sounds so sophisticated, and you tell it to sound like the chief rabbi and give a really beautiful answer that reads nicely. But we don't do that. And we actually have it only give you direct quotes and only give you information from direct quotes that are cited that you could click into and see in the original transcript, even if it's a little choppier, because we need it to be verifiable. We need the content that it's giving you to be directly from the source. And we don't want to rely on an LLM that we don't know how it's trained and what its biases are and where it's getting this information from. At every stage, we have this sensitivity in mind to make it as verifiable as possible, to make it as close to the original content as possible, to keep it easy to make sure. And I would say what's different than just transcripts, I've been alluding to, and I don't know if I've been articulating well, is that even if our transcripts, someone else had transcripts that were the same accuracy, I think one of the biggest differentiations that Sofer.AI is doing right now is we're building a whole ecosystem of what you could do with it. You could get an outline. So a wonderful thing is you transcribe a shear. Let's say I just did this. I was transcribing Q&A, an hour and a half Q&A with a Rav. And then we have these automatic generated outlines with timestamps of each point. At 5 minutes, what's discussed here. At 10 minutes, what's discussed here. At 12 minutes, what's discussed here. And you could click it and it'll bring you to that point. So I wasn't necessarily interested in, I didn't know if I want to listen to the whole Q&A. But now I could say, I want to listen to this question. Let me listen to this. Oh, I want to listen to this question. Let me listen to this. Let me listen to this question. Listen to this. And it's the whole ecosystem. It's the ability to search for everything, to categorize all your content. So imagine, every year, a new parsha comes up, and you've been adding to your Sofer.AI account every year for Parshas Bo. Now Parshas Bo comes up. It's like, what did I write last year on Parshas Bo? Or what did I say on this pasuk? Or what shir did I really like last year that I saved and transcribed and all that? So it's the whole ecosystem around it that I think makes it strong, and all the parts working together with this sensitivity for it for Torah.
Another thing that's important to emphasize is that it's one thing to read a transcription of this podcast or whatever it is you're reading, where Apple's transcribing it, and maybe it got the word and chapped what the word is, and maybe it didn't. And either way, it wrote in English. With Sofer.AI, you can have it in English. You can click on it, and it can change that word to Hebrew, and so it'll be written out in English spelling or Hebrew spelling, right? You can kind of change how you want it spelled.
Yeah, we let you decide how you want it to be spelled. If you want it transliterated, or if you want it to be in the original Hebrew. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice, fun feature. And the other one that you just mentioned, the searching feature, is what you term on the website as Meshiv, your personal AI Shalom Meshiv. So again, explain that because, as you said, it's not Shalom Meshiv like ChatGPT and say, hey, I have a Shaila, give me a Teretz. That's not what it is.
Yeah, specifically didn't call it like Rav or Rebbe or rabbi, specifically. Like it kind of wanted to have some sort of embodiment, cuteness to it, but more of a tool of someone or something that helps you find things and assist you more than is a figure of authority. So that's was with the naming. And then, as I mentioned, the way it's designed now, and even we're going to update it to even make it more sophisticated, is it only exposes to you content answers from your information that you provide. So if you, over the last few months, have been uploading shiurim every month to your Sofer.AI to get transcribed, and now you want to ask a question, you can ask the most basic question. If it's not in one of those transcripts that you uploaded, or you could also upload your own Word documents if you want and create your own documents as well from scratch. But if it's not in one of the documents that you provided to it on the site, it will not answer. It'll say, I don't have this access to this information. So if you ask it, what bracha do you make on an apple? You ask it at ChatGPT, you ask it Gemini, you ask it any AI, it will tell you the correct answer, and it hopefully gets it right, like and not problematic, but it'll tell you the answer, right? On Meshiv, it will say, I don't have access to that information. It's not giving you answers. It's just helping you find the information you're looking for. So I think that's a big distinction. And it's a limitation, but that limitation is not a limitation because we can't build it differently, but we put that limitation in place because we think that's the proper way to be using the tool.
It can't hallucinate. This is the problem we have with AIs. They hallucinate. So it's not hallucinating because it's literally just pulling from whatever you gave it, from whatever your shiurim or whatever you're asking. But it can be very useful. So I was on the Shuli Bornstein, Lekut Daf Yomi Yarchei Kala in Eretz Yisrael, and we got Chaim Weiss of 24/6 showed the presentation of the new Lekut Daf Yomi app that's coming out still. And one of the features is using Sofer.AI is transcribing everything. I think they're calling it like Surely AI. You can ask it a Shaila and it'll, be not a Shaila essentially, but, a question on the Gemara or whatever it is. And it'll pull out and it'll show you, I'm pulling from this stuff over here or this raid bite over here. And it's exactly what it's going to do. And it's a very cool feature. When you see it on a PowerPoint slide, it was really cool to see it in use. And so essentially, it's a tool that if you have like 2 shiurim, it's not going to be very cool. But if you have a lot of data and many shiurim, many recording, many transcriptions, then it will be very useful.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's 100% correct. There's really two, users. There's the people, like everyday people that are using it, as I said, they're like second brain, like where they store the ideas they like, and there's a lot of value there. But you could really see the immense value on like the whole Klal Yisrael level if you could get hundreds of thousands of hours in text format. Now you're making all this Torah, all these ideas accessible. So all the platforms, and we hope to work with as many as possible, and we're in talks with many of them, and hopefully, very cool things will be rolling out soon. But imagine every single piece of audio Torah that's ever been recorded, which is so much easier to produce as well than written text, can now be accessible in a way that was never accessible before, to be searched. You could ask a search, where was this discussed? I'll give you every single place this was discussed by this rabbi or by this teacher or by any rabbi. I think you really see the more information there is, the more powerful. I also would like to say just about asking questions, even if it can't hallucinate, I think it's important to note there are mistakes by omission, right? So I would never rely on it for halacha, because let's say you ask it a halacha question and it says, this is what it says on this topic right here, directly pulled quote, and it surfaces to you, and you can verify that this was said by the rabbi. It could be that that's true, but it's missing what was, said afterwards. Oh, in this case, we're more machmir. In this case, we're more makel. Or maybe it didn't realize that part of the question is actually relevant and doesn't align perfectly, and it didn't. So what it found was the most similar case, but not the exact case. So I would just like to clarify that, because again, I try to have that sensitivity when I talk about it and talk about the product. It doesn't mean just because it can't hallucinate now it could replace your rabbi or could to answer halachic questions or anything like that. It just means what you see is you could verify is true, like that is a true piece of thing that was said, and you could that in many cases is enough of a level of trust depending on the question.
Let's turn to OCR. to text. And this is something, as you said, we were talking about this podcast episode. We were on the phone and we had a long conversation about this. This is something, as a Sfarim, lover here, this is something that I'm always thinking about, especially someone that enjoys redoing old Sfarim, something that I did with Torah Chaim, and it's like, redoing old Torah, you have to go and pay someone like Ali Zayas to go retypeset it, then you have to proofread and edit it and so on. And it's always like, well, what about OCR to text? Can we upload these PDFs and pull it out? Now, obviously, there's different fonts, namely, you'll have the regular Hebrew font, then you'll have Rashi font, and this is not always such a simple thing, but we were discussing this, and you said this was an idea that you had, and as you mentioned before, I'm glad our conversation was the impetus to you rolling it out, and it's still I'm sure it's going to get much better. Let's talk about that feature. And right now, it's a new feature. So where is it holding? What can one expect of it? And what can one kind of not expect from it yet?
Yeah, for sure. So as I've been saying, the mission is to make Torah more accessible. And one of the issues is if you have these 100-page PDFs that you can't extract the text from, unless you're reading every page or going through every page, you can't really get the information out of it. So what OCR does is it allows you to get the text. I think I develop it always from the perspective it's just an individual, because I'm an individual. I'm not a platform. I'm not all this. So I love this because if I'm researching a topic, or if I want to look into a question I have, or I want to know what does this Sofer say on this topic, I can now take hundreds of pages at once, put it in, and search for a keyword or search for a word, just like I'm searching through a Microsoft Word document. And that's what you could do right now. As you mentioned, some PDF types will be better or worse depending on the quality. It can do Rashi if it's clear. If it's a clear, PDF. If it's less clear and Rashi and old, it might be worse. Also, we put a lot of time into trying to preserve the formatting, so 2 columns or different sections. If it's more complex, like a page of Shulchan Aruch with all the Nosei Kalim, or maybe even the Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos, it could struggle with those more complex formats as well. But we're going to continue working on that, and everything we do is very iterative. And then for the future, again, right now on the site, you get the text and you can just search keywords. Imagine, just like I was talking about before, you could kind of use our Meshiv on it. Imagine you can now upload tens of thousands of pages of PDFs that are now OCR text. And now you could ask, where was this idea discussed? Where was this idea discussed? Or give me answers to this question. Or where was this question asked, right? Any of these things that you're interested in looking for, you can now search all of these PDFs and get an answer using the power of AI to understand it and to surface to you nicely. And again, the other thing we have on the site is, if I didn't make clear, once it's in text, the what you could do with AI is limitless. So one of the things, the features that we offer on the site is to be able to take your text of a transcript or a document and transform it using AI. So I recommend if you want to make outlines so you could quickly see what a shir is talking about. But one of the features, one of the use cases I demoed is you can make a list of questions. Give me a list of 20 questions based off the shir and give me 20 answers. So and you could do chazar and make sure you know what you could, based off this text, it's limitless how you could transform that into a way that helps you understand it. And if you have also it linked to you right there that you could verify in a way like that, I think you could both leverage the flexibility of using AI to transform content, Torah content, in a way that is easiest for you to access it, but also with the responsibility of being able to verify it because it's right there.
So as someone interested in redoing Sfarim, I will say the restraints right now, it's not doing the OCR on manuscripts. And first of all, there are so many different types of kisviyatis, right? You have Ashkenazi handwriting and those from Arabic lands, and then you have Italian and so on and so forth. It's not doing that, right? It's not doing handwriting. That's not happening anytime soon. I mean, you can answer this better than me. Yeah, like you said, it's really doing the classical Hebrew script rather than Rashi. Obviously, it's dependent upon the quality of the scan. Some scans are just better than other scans, and so it can read it or not read it. So that's an issue sometimes we have, even though the scans in general, the quality, if you go to National Library of Israel and so on, you're having better quality scans all the time now. But that's another issue with it as well. Something that we were talking before that I want to ask you about is, what about when you're taking not just one, when you have a Sofer, it runs on, it's easy. But let's say something like a Gemara. We have a Gemara in the middle and Rashi on one side, Tais on the other side, some other Mefarshim. There's like a footnote, an Aleph, or a note, or think of a Shulchan Aruch, or any sort of Sofer, Chumash with a Rashi in the bottom. How does it handle those type of OCR situations?
I actually didn't test it on a Gemara. I didn't think I didn't think of that use case, probably because it might not be the most common thing that you want to do, but maybe Shulchan Aruch, or there could be complicated ones. We tested it on the most basic, multi-column and like top section, bottom section type of svarim that have like footnotes. For those, it does a really nice job of re-rendering the text into that format, and that was a lot of like the chiddush that we worked with, is to be able to create the layout. If you do it, you'll see it really mimic the layout, and even it could do some complicated sections, like different, if there's 2-3 sections and footnotes, it could mimic it really nicely. For the more complicated ones, like you mentioned, it could very well be that it doesn't do it properly. But as I said, a lot of the hashkafa of Sofer.AI is that there's something worthy of being helpful to the Jewish people that could be helpful. People, we put it out even before it's perfect, and then we take the feedback, and people love giving feedback and iterate on that and see what needs to be fixed. And I think one of the really interesting dynamics is, as I said, like I very often build from my own perspective, and I'll release something into production, into the site. And sometimes I think something will resonate with people and it doesn't. Sometimes the use cases that people come up that I think will be common aren't, but then other ones are totally super common that I didn't even think about. So that's why a lot of like how I approach it is I just put the work out there in the public and almost let like the public guide me on where does it need to be better. Because, on the flip side, I could spend, 2 more months, making sure we could do every, page of Gemara, and then no one uses the Gemara, versus if you put out what we have, and now I get feedback, and there's a certain type of a format that everyone's like, this is the type of thing we're doing. So this is kind of how we build really quickly. And if you sign up and you see on the site, we build really quickly. It's through trying to focus on what people really want and where people are like guiding us and telling us like how it could be helpful. So, if people listen to this podcast and say, we need this format, it's not working, we'll get it done, so.
Crowdsourcing
Yeah.
At its finest. Now, one more question about the OCR.
I just want to add there. I think that's like a big part of like the approach of Sofer.AI is like we're very not research based. We're not just like researching things for the sake of research. It's like really just building products that help people in their making a Torah accessible to them, to making it easier for them to learn, making it easier for them to share the Torah, making it easier for them to preserve the Torah. All these things, it's very, very practical. Like there's no like months and months of research. Oh, we think this is interesting, and it's kind of disconnected from like real world use case. So I think that's really nice. I think sometimes it can be very enticing to like do things that seem interesting but are disconnected. So
I have a question on that, but I'll hold it. I want to ask you one more thing about the OCR, which is, you mentioned, you kind of alluded to this, but when someone wants to extract it, so they take their PDF, it does a great job, it goes from PDF to text. Is it now a Word doc? Like, what format is it available right now that you can extract it? And that sounds like that's something that you're working on based on feedback, but right now, what can you do with it?
Yeah, so right now you could download the Word document as a Word document and get the text. It won't preserve the nice layout that we do because we have, specific styling. So you could get, if you need the text, you could get the text. And I want to look more into if we could let you download it and preserve the formatting, because I think it'd be fantastic if you could get like the 2 columns, and it's not just the 2, like you could, if like there's breakups within the columns and bolds, like we'll get the bolds and all that. Like it really, it doesn't like typeset it perfectly and format it perfectly, but it is nice experience to just like be able to read it in that similar format. So I want to make it easier to download into that format. Right now, when you download it as a Word, it just gives you the text in like paragraphs, like, full paragraphs. But we make it as easy as possible for everything to export off the site. We don't want to like gatekeep it. Like, oh, you transcribe to Sofer.AI, keep it here. You have it, you OCR, you're going to keep it here. We don't do that. We want you to be able to keep it, own it, all that. We're a tool. We're not like a platform, right? But at the same time, anytime people ask, like, I want to take it off the site, I always just ask why. Because I want to make it that Sofer.AI is the place where you do everything with your Torah. Like, this is the place, any software that you need for your Torah should be Sofer.AI. And it will be, months or years away from getting every edge case. But like, that is the vision, that like, this is where you keep your Torah, this is where you search your Torah, this is where you edit it. Like, and we can make a really nice editor that's really perfected for Torah, and this is where you could chazer your Torah. We'll have flashcards and extract it, and like the more it's all unified in one ecosystem, I think it makes it more powerful. Like what's the phrase? The sum of the parts is greater than the. I forget the phrase, but we could cut that out. You don't have to. Whatever. Yeah. But
the what is it? The sum of the parts is greater than the whole, or the whole is greater than the parts.
I think it's like sum of the parts is greater than the whole. Whatever the phrase is, I think that's true. When you have it all together in one place, it's going to just be powerful. So yeah, we offer the ability and we try to make it as good as possible. But that just like on a vision perspective, like we want you to do it here.
It's a work in progress, and everyone should contact you and let you know. So something you were mentioning, the question that I wanted to follow up is like, what is the unintended uses of Sofer.AI? As you said, you might think of one use and you put it out, and then either that use is actually used or it's not used, something else. Like, what is one unintended use that's happened since Sofer.AI began?
Yeah, I think using it, and again, we don't design it to be used as like a halachic source or rabbi, but like anything like that, I think is really like a dangerous case of using AI. And, people are going to, like, I hear so many stories of like, just people love telling me about how they use AI in Torah. So many people tell me, oh, I wrote a Dvar Torah using ChatGPT. I wrote a speech using that. And people are doing it. And it's unfortunate, but I don't think we don't design Sofer.AI that doesn't lend itself to that. But I could see how people could try to use it that way. So you shouldn't use it to, be a rabbi or to answer questions. I think that's one. I'll give an example of a specific feature that was a lot of back and forth on that. So I reference it, the ability to transform your text. So meaning, let's say you transcribe a shir. It's a hour-long shir, many pages of text. We have the option to write your own custom prompt for how you want to pass it through AI. So maybe it's translate it from Hebrew to English, or maybe it's summarize it, or maybe it's give me bullet points, or maybe it's tell me the questions discussed here. Maybe I said the Chazara questions, all these things. And I think that tool could be used, really responsibly, but also irresponsibly. Like, if you try to leverage it to be just give me the maskana of every halachic question here, like that would be the case. Because of that, we made it that you can't ask a question to the text and it gives you an answer, like specifically. It could only, if it's not like a generalized transformation that could, like you can't write a prompt that says like, tell me what this shir says on, do I need to tovel my Keurig? You can't, if you try to write that, it'll actually flag it and say, we can't process this. It has to be like, give me the outline of all the ideas discussed here, something more generalized, and then it'll pass that filter. But there's a lot of tension here because this is a feature where the output is not, any sentence in the output is not directly tied to the original input, right? The original text, the original source. And that kind of goes against a little bit about this verifiability that we want, that everything should be very quickly, you can verify it, look at it, all that, right? The flip side is like everyone was emailing that they're taking their Sofer.AI transcripts and just putting it in ChatGPT and putting it in Gemini and putting it in wherever and doing these things with it and like putting it together. And I think it's going to be a lot easier to do it in a responsible way when the way it's set up is to not allow like these unintended like hacky type of questions, and also to at least, even if you can't verify sentence line for line to the original transcript, it's going to be right there. Like I think it's very nice that you can view them both together and view it in the same place. And it's not like if you take 100 pages and then of a Sofer.AI transcript and then put it into ChatGPT, the experience of being able to verify the output of ChatGPT is very hard. So there's a balance here. And because of this, we only rolled it out to like our max plan, which is like really just for more like enterprise customers, like, or big users, not like, kids or people just like hacking at it, playing around with it. But like, these are like the types of questions I think that are hard, like where to draw that line to give the user the ability to do whatever they want with their content, but also making it responsible that it stays grounded in the original context in Torah.
Let's talk about that. You just mentioned the different plans, or you kind of alluded to one plan. What are the plans if someone wants to sign up for Sofer.AI? How does that work?
Yeah, so it really starts free. The free plan is, designed that, regular person that just wants to to try it out and to use it periodically. Goes to weekly share, wants to transcribe it, save it, OCR a little bit, maybe upload a thing here and there, get basic features, get the outlines, all the basic things. The free plan's great. It works, and we want to make it accessible for the community. Then if you need a lot more usage, not a lot more, if you need more usage, we have a pro plan, which gives you access then to the Meshiv feature, summaries feature, the WhatsApp bot. We didn't mention it. It's not really Torah. This is not Torah related, but we made a bot that you could forward voice notes to. It transcribes it. More OCR usage, all these things, just a lot more usage in general. Then if you need even more than that, and you need access to that transformation feature that I mentioned, when I say more than that, more usage, you're transcribing more and you're doing more OCR, and you need the transformation feature, which again is really designed for like platforms. Then we have a higher plan, a max plan. It's free. Pro is $18 a month. Max plan is $54 a month. Multiples of Chaim. But we try to really align it with the different users. Free being just for the everyday, you use it casually. Pro is like, this is like an integral piece of like your learning and like it's really valuable to you and you're using it a lot. And then max is like really for if you're using it in like real bulk and need like features that support that and the like. And we have an API. And if you know how to code, API means you can connect to it via code that you don't need any plan for. You can use free. You just pay as you use it, pay as you go.
What do you see as the future of Sofer.AI at this time?
Yeah, I see. I have too many ideas for the amount of time that I have. So the future is just continuing towards that mission in step with like where the community guides us. But there's so much to do. I think the power of as the general technology in the world advances to where it makes it available to do more really significant advancements in how to access information. If we could get that hooked up to our Torah context and our Torah information, it's going to be fantastic. And there's just like even just features like I want to make it that you could click on any line on any daf in the Gemara, and it'll tell you every single like daf yomi shir that talked about this and give you the exact timestamp, and you can listen to what everyone had to say on it, all that. Or I want to make a Chazara feature where you could upload all the shirim that you went to and all the documents that you have and OCR them and put them together. And then we basically have a Duolingo where every day it gives you 5 questions and it says, here are the answers. And the answers will be verifiably sourced because it'll show you the answer in the original text and it'll help people learn. And that's my mind always goes to the individual user because that's who I am. I'm building for myself. And then on the platform side, I would love to work with as many platforms as possible and not just platforms, rabbis themselves in a lot of ways are platforms. Rabbis come to me and, they have 20 years of audio, 15 years, 12 years, however many years they've been putting out info shiurim, and that they're like a mini platform, they have thousands and thousands of hours. And so to work with rabbis, to work with shuls, with organizations and, big Torah platforms to take all this information that they have and to help them share it with the world, whether it be transcription or OCR or search or summaries or whatever it may be. I think that would be the vision, just to work towards this goal.
So I'll link in the show notes to Sofer.AI, Sofer.AI. A link there for those interested. You can check it out, sign up, look at the transcriptions. You can look at the OCR. You can sign up for the free tier, see what you think. And Zach, what about any feedback if listeners are using the OCR tool and they're like, I don't like how this works. I think you should do this. How do they reach out? How do they give feedback to Sofer?
Yeah, definitely. I love feedback. Really good critical feedback is how we improve. And you could always reach out to Zach, ZACH, at Sofer.AI with any thoughts, comments, concerns, issues.
Perfect. So I'll put that in the show notes as well for those interested. If they need to reach out for anything, for any kind, any issues or any feedback that they have, also positive feedback, of course. I'm sure, I have a podcast. I know positive feedback is always welcome. And so, thank you, Zach, for joining me to discuss Sofer.AI and AI in Torah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.